What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about billionaire Chris Sacca's favorite book, The Magic of Thinking Big. We're going to be talking about if this is actually useful for you in your life, whether it will help you achieve your goals, make more money, all of that stuff coming up. Let's go. Alright, let's just get started. So this book has sold 6 million copies, and it is one of those books that have been on my to-be-read list. I have like a 1,000 books on my to-be-read list, and it's a compilation of all these different things like top 10 lists on the internet and recommendations from trusted people, reputable people, all sorts of stuff piled together in this list. And you can find that entire list on my site, as well as my have already read list, which has passed the 100 mark. And this book is actually very, very fascinating. First off, when I first heard about this and I put this on my list, I think it was just one of those books because of the cheesy sounding title. I just thought, oh, it's just another one of those books that may be of use. And then I saw more and more recommendations of this, and I just thought, okay, it's another one of those cheesy books. And then you find out, and this isn't the first time, this has happened for numerous books, and not always, but sometimes, and in this case, this was the case, you find that, hey, this book's actually being recommended by a lot of very successful people, like the investor Chris Sacca, and he attributes it to helping him achieve the success he wants. And despite the cheesy sounding title, I think this book is quite amazing. One of the big points that encompasses the entire book is mindset. And here's something that is very important and quite astounding. And he starts the book off by saying this. He says he has this real life story about this average guy who is part of the sales team and is making 5 or 6 times as much as the other people on the team. And so the boss comes up and he starts talking to all the other salespeople, and he says stuff like, this man is no smarter than you. He didn't have any advantages in education, no advantages in health. He had no advantages in terms of money. He had no extra advantages in terms of access to accounts or access to clients through networking. He didn't have any of those things, and yet he's making so many more times than you. And the reason is because he thought bigger. Now, there's obviously more to that, but I think the big point I want to emphasize from this message is that this is an example of someone who clearly was not exceptionally smarter or any better. He didn't have any advantages or inherited wealth when he grew up. And I think that's such an important message, because so many people, they make excuse after excuse. And when you actually start studying the history of successful people, a lot of them had probably more disadvantages than you will ever have. Some of these people, like, they were sexually abused when they were young, like Oprah Winfrey. Others, they were pregnant, and then their baby didn't turn out alive while they were 18 years of age, like Oprah Winfrey. And a bunch of other stuff, like all these things that you would assume would give them advantages. Sometimes they don't even get advantages from that. Like, for instance, Anderson Cooper. He had a Yale degree. His parents had connections. Couldn't get a job in the industry he wanted to out of college. And so he set his own path. He forged his own path. He started making his own videos and selling them dirt cheap as a freelance news reporter. And he got his own start because the industry wasn't helping him. So these examples, and there's like hundreds more if you're willing to read about them. A great book to get started is a book called Getting There. I did a video with the author. And the stories, I mean, these people worked really hard. And here's something that's, I think, it's a bit of a nuanced topic. Like, the book, with that initial story, it brings the point that this man, this account sales manager, he was no smarter he didn't work harder at all. He actually worked less than his fellow peers, and he had no advantages in education or inherited wealth or anything like that. And it makes a very interesting point, because I have maybe overemphasized in other videos how you can get a tremendous advantage, and a lot of successful people, not all of them, have used advantages like working much harder than your competition, outworking them, or pushing much harder and working 80-hour days and whatever else to succeed. And although those are factors you can use, I think this illustration and story kind of shows you that that's not necessary sometimes. Rather than working harder, if you work smarter, you can do a lot more and still have time to chill. And I think working hard is something that's overemphasized. It's one of those factors that's already known by many people, and yet again, as having said that, there's also a lot of college students that are dead lazy that I still see. But it's something that people know about, and a lot of them not necessarily will use or have the true motivation to use. But I think it's something that's not always the best thing to do. You don't have to sacrifice health, family, all that stuff, and you don't have to work 80-hour days. I think there's a healthy balance, and there's too many stories of people who made a lot of money who sacrificed their health, and now they're bedridden, or they have health issues they cannot recoup from. And I think what makes this book special is that it brings out the point that's not as emphasized as much, which is that, hey, you don't have to do that. You can, sometimes it's important to have a balance in many areas of your life, and you can do that through this book. And so the entire book is 300 pages of very unique mindsets, and each of them, like every chapter is about 10 to 20 pages, each of them is illustrated by a real life example, which is just incredible. Not a lot of people go to the point of giving real life examples, and that's what I think sets this book apart. So this is very fascinating for me, and I think I highly recommend it. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check out the book on Amazon. And I really like this book so far, and mindsets are one of those things that I think is very, very important if you want to be wealthy. And being wealthy, again, it won't, like, people think it will make you happier. And I've done a lot of videos on the science and correlation between happiness and income, and it's, generally speaking, money will not guarantee happiness. And on top of that, money is not everything. However, having wealth to a certain extent is important, and having that extra comfort, that extra safety, is so crucial. And if you don't have your personal finances in check and your money, what happens if something unexpected comes up and you can't put food on the table, or you get an unexpected health occurrence, cancer, tuberculosis, whatever else, and you can't pay for it, and you don't have money saved up, or you may be earning a lot of money, but then because you don't know how to manage your money, you're always in debt because you spend more than you earn, even though you're making so much money. So these things are very, very important, and that's why I think it's well worth pursuing to a certain extent. Obviously, you don't want materialism to consume you. And this book, I think, is so important because mindsets are so important. And I was one of those people who didn't care much about mindsets once upon a time. Or at the very least, I didn't understand why they were so useful. Initially, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And there's no harm in adopting or considering these mindsets. When I first started getting into self-development and these success books and so forth, which is already like above a lot of people who are just very stubborn and they won't even think to do it. I remember this one person who's my peer, and he was just like so stubborn about that whole idea that he wouldn't even consider this, and he was just like, oh, are you rich yet? Are you rich yet from reading these? Sort of to mock me. And I guess, you know, it's partially because there's a lot of scammy crap books out there. And it sort of brought out the stigma of how to get rich quick books are like scams. And oftentimes there's a lot of crap out there, and that's true. But that's one of the reasons my channel is here, to bring you actually decent, good books. And oftentimes most of them are not how to get rich quick. If they are, they're not quick. They're long-term, sustainable, value-driven, like not quick type things. And this book is so incredible in my opinion because I have seen so many books and millionaires, many of which who don't even know about each other, who have published their own books. In fact, there's a few others today, and they almost all of them, they talk about mindset. And some of them have devoted entire portions to the book to mindset and how important mindset is to achieving wealth. And I don't, you know, going into detail as to why that's important is for a whole nother video. There's a whole variety of reasons. But I think mindset is important because if you don't have the right mindset, you're oftentimes blocking yourself from achieving wealth. Again, there's so many, I can't elaborate in this short video. Just to give you an example, one of the reasons is, one possible mindset problem is that you might think to yourself, well, how can I bother to charge someone for my material? And you just give everything away for free. And then you hinder yourself because you never ever bother to charge because you're so concerned about this whole thing. And from there, you never charge and you waste all that potential, even when there's people who would willingly pay money for some of your stuff. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of variations depending on your personality type. But this book is all about mindsets, and it's just incredible because, you know, this is one of those things where you see what I like to call individualized natural selection. And it's like, it's a parallel analogy to evolution and evolutionary biology. So what you'll see in specific species of flying mammals, for instance, despite them being on opposite sides of the earth, for their own specific reasons, they have developed in their own ways, although sometimes very different ways, but all for the same, you know, end goal. They have developed on their own special ways of flight that are in some ways eerily similar. And I think the same thing has kind of applied to, you know, a lot of millionaires. They have on their own figured out how important mindset is. And it's just incredible reading these books and seeing, oh, there it is again, and realizing that they didn't all, you know, one day meet up at some grand summit and decide that mindset is an important thing to have. No, they just discovered it on their own. And just today, that's occurred. Like literally, I went to pick up a book on hold from the library, and I flipped to the beginning of the book, and guess what's one of the first things that's emphasized in the book? Mindset. In fact, I'll show you the book. This is a book by Ewan Chia, and it's called How I Made My First Million on the Internet. And if you flip to, and I literally got this book today. And as I'm flipping to the page, again, I just want to remind you that, again, it's not about materialism or, you know, having all this money to showboat or do all this crap with, like buy expensive cars. Because, again, first off, you're not going to be any happier. Second off, you're going to look like a complete douche. And third off, it's not about materialism. But, you know, I've seen too many people who are struggling because they don't understand personal finance, and they don't understand, you know, they could really benefit from a few $100 extra a month. So here it is, The Winning Mindset. And he says here, If you've been a student of mine for any length of time, you know that I talk a lot about mindset. And then he goes on and on about mindset. So there you go. As always, like and subscribe. And I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.